Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at a best of tarot and oracle pairings. Let's have a look. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I'm a bit of a fanatic when it comes to pairings. I really like pairing tarot decks with oracle decks, and sometimes I will also use different kind of decks, always card decks. And the reason why I really like and really enjoy doing that is because I strongly believe that the message you can convey with a tarot deck, no matter which tarot deck that is, can actually be complete for sure, but you can also enrich the experience whenever you're giving a reading to a person or to yourself. You can definitely enrich the experience with some sort of a wrap-up or send-off message that you can definitely give with by pulling an oracle card. And that's something that I do in my practice. I do it for myself, I do it for friends and family, and I also do it for clients. And I also strongly believe that you kind of need a kind of a buffer. In my experience, I have been reading tarot for clients for over 35 years now. And in my experience, I feel like whenever there's the end of a reading, not all readings, but some readings can be pretty intense. I don't know you, but personally, I feel like I'm never truly done unless I have some kind of a last message to give to anyone I read a giving to. And tarot cards don't always do that. You might be able to find that specific tarot card that you know, it constitutes a really nice message as a wrap up or a send off. But I feel that oracle decks do that in a much softer way. Obviously it depends on which oracle decks you're using. I would definitely never use let's say the Poesis oracle or the Reclaim oracle or the Journey into the Lonely Soul oracle to do that kind of wrap-up messages, because those messages, you know, those decks will definitely give something that is very powerful as well, and it's not something to wind down. So that's necessarily something that you need to provide to the person you're giving a reading to, you know, that kind of winding down possibility with an oracle card. So it will always be a gentle, a kind or a hug deck as an oracle card. So let's have a look first at my at the decks that I wanted to show you today. There's quite a few actually, so it's going to be probably a long video, but these decks have been chosen for a reason, because today it's not just tarot and oracle pairings, it's a video that will show you the best of. And when I talk about the best of, I'm referring to as by popular demand, as voted by you guys in my Instagram account. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I'm really a bit of a fanatic, and almost every day I post at least seven or eight pairings between one deck and then, you know, 6, 7 or 8 different decks that I think pair well with a specific deck, whether it's an oracle or a tarot deck. And then I ask people to comment on which ones they think it's a winner. And I've been doing that for about a year now. And I really enjoy the way in which I get responses from people, because now it's come to the point in which I have something like 30, 40, 50 comments from people about, you know, which one they think it's the best pairing. And so what I've done, I looked back in the last 3 or 4 months, and I came up with a list of, I think it's 3, 6, 7, 8 decks. And for each of those 8 decks, I've got 2 decks that were voted the best of in the pairings. So let's start with the Mabon. So this deck is not actually out yet. It's been, it's a Rockpool publication. Rockpool, what happened was that it's part of the series The Seasons of the Witch Oracles. This is the Mabon one, and it will be released I think worldwide, or at least in the US, in June, and then the rest of the world will probably see it in July, August. The reason why I've got it is because I went to the Mind Body Spirit festival in Sydney the other week, And Rockpool, being Australian, you know, they don't really treat us well in the sense that they really postpone releases in Australia, even though they actually are from Australia. But what they do is whenever there is a festival, they actually bring these decks with them for sale. And so you will have the possibility to have access to them before the rest of the world, which is, you know, I'm very grateful for, because at least one publishing company that we do have in the Australian territory that is that is thinking about Australians first. Let me tell you, it's becoming prohibitive for us in Australia to buy anything that comes from the US. Europe is still sort of okay, even though it's still rather expensive. We're talking about probably around 30 euros for the shipping cost of one deck. But when it comes to the US, we're looking now at $60. So it's crazy. It's really crazy. But let's have a look at these pairings. So I really love this oracle. If you haven't watched my latest couple of videos, I talked about this, and I did also a flip through of this deck, and it's really beautiful because it's different from the other oracles of the same series. So in as much as the sentences at the bottom of the cards are not actual poems, there are sentences that link really well with the keywords on the card. So we've got, just to give you one example here, we got the corn maze, and at the bottom it says, although your path is unclear, it is there waiting for your faith to lead you. And I really enjoy this because I was saying in my video that the poems, even though they were very enjoyable, very beautiful, very, very powerful, especially the ones on Samhain, because I'm not a native English speaker, it was actually it created a bit of a distraction for me whenever I was giving a reading with the Samhain, Beltane, or, you know, Yule. And that actually lifted me away from the reading, because I needed to read the poem maybe a couple of times to actually understand it, and it wasn't very easy. And I did enjoy them, but whenever I was giving a reading, I always felt like I was really losing my thread, you know, and that was not very practical for me, because I give a lot of readings to clients, and I need to stay in the moment. So I really appreciate that they replaced the poems with sentences. But let's have a look. So I have been pairing this with 6 or 7 decks, but the ones that have been voted the best by my Instagram followers, the first one is the Solara Occulto Tarot, which, by the way, I know that now it is out of print. However, this deck is currently funding on Kickstarter. And the beautiful thing is that, I don't know if you remember that the first couple of editions came with really large borders, like really, really large borders that I trimmed off because of, well, practicality. Basically, I couldn't shuffle. I do have a lot of injuries in my hands and fingers. And so what happened was that I heard there were a lot of people trimming out the borders, and the creator, you know, listened to the popular demand of reprinting this deck without the borders, so it will be borderless. And the other really good news is that it won't only be the Solara, so the tarot deck, but it will also be quite a few now, because I think that we've reached another stretch goal. So there's going to be something like 22 or even more cards from the creator's oracle deck, which was called Mercury, Salt and Sulfur, so the 3 elements of alchemy. And that oracle deck, it's always been in my unicorn list because it's so powerful, so beautiful. You don't even need the booklet. I've seen it several times, but I never owned it. And I'm so happy that now they're going ahead and releasing, you know, with this Kickstarter, they're releasing the deck and also adding on those cards from the oracle. So this is how these two pair well together. First and foremost, I believe that the color palette is perfect. First of all, because we're talking about Mabon. Mabon is the festivity of the autumn or fall, what we call it, equinox, and it talks about harvesting. It talks about the way in which nature you know, fulfills its cycle after having released you know, the wars of winter, let's say, and flourished and blossoming into the spring and creating with the power of summer. Necessarily it needs to come to be a harvest season in which we can tell that everything is ready, everything is ripe, everything is right there for you to, you know, pick it. And it does have the colors that necessarily come out of that. So it's sort of a muted color palette, but it's predominantly these kind of burnt tones of oranges and browns, and you know, even when there's green, it's not the luscious green of summer, it's the green of autumn. And it's a perfect pair up with the Solara, because the Solara has, as you can see, if you don't know this deck, but by the way, absolutely gorgeous, one of my favorite ones, does have this kind of color palette. It really creates this kind of resonance and echoes between the cards. Not only that, but it actually reads really, really well. As a matter of fact, what I've done, because in Australia right now, we're actually going towards Yule. So Yule will be in about, I think about 4 weeks time, more or less, at the end of June in any case. And now we're at the end of May. So about, yeah, 4 weeks. So we're not in Mabon season anymore. But I have been using this deck anyway, because Australia is a bit odd when it comes to season, especially my area where I live, so in the northern part of Sydney, in the northern beaches in Manly. There's days in which, you know, it's literally cold, really cold, not European cold, but cold for Australia. So we've got 6 degrees Celsius, for example. 6-7 degrees Celsius at night, and during the day we get to a maximum of perhaps 15. So that's cold for us, okay? Don't judge me, it's cold for us. And what that means is that so what I was saying is that some days you can have that, but some days it can actually go up to 22. So it can be a balmy day. And so as a consequence, nature doesn't have that kind of coloring that you can see in Yule season anywhere else in the world. Even though we're approaching Yule season, you will still find these colors. You will still find the colors of autumn, the colors of fall. And therefore, it's actually really, really beautiful to use this deck right now, at least in where I live, let's say, because Australia is big. Guys, it's really big. It takes, if you jump on a flight from Sydney to Perth, it will still take you 5 hours to get there, or 4.5 hours to get there. So it's a big country. So as you can see, it's a beautiful combination. You can really tell the way in which the cards talk to each other. They have this kind of conversation. And even not really, I'm not really paying attention to the keywords now because I'm talking. But whenever I do a reading with these two, it is very beautiful the way in which you can find, for example, there's a lot of resonances and echoes in the directionality of the cards. So the Solara is very, very good at this. And the reason why I actually enjoy it trimmed even more is because now the cards can actually breathe. And when you put them together, you know, even closer together with other decks, there is this kind of continuity that would not have been there had the borders not been removed, which I'm not saying I should have done, because I actually removed the borders when I did not know that this deck was going to go out of print and, you know, so hard to find. I bought it immediately when it was available, and there were a few available. I don't know if you remember, but it didn't go out of print in one day. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll buy another one. You know, when I can, I'll buy another one, and I'll just leave the borders on. But for now, I'm just going to trim the borders of this one. And then it went out of print, and I was like, uh-oh. But in any case, do you see how strong the bond with these two decks is? It's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's really beautiful. So this is the Solara Occulto paired up with the Mabon from the Seasons of the Witch oracles from Rockpool. Let's have a look at another tarot deck that will pair up with this oracle. So the second best pair, as voted by you, tarot with the Oracle Mabon from Seasons of the Witches, is the Gentle Tarot by Mary in the Sky. These two decks also share a very similar earthy kind of vibe. I think I did a video a couple of months ago about how I read with elements. I read tarot with elements, especially because I believe that there are decks that are predominantly, you know, focusing on one element rather than another. And I think one of the decks that I've chosen to show you how strongly the element of earth was present in the deck was indeed the Gentle Tarot. I really strongly encourage you to feel the difference between the elements in the tarot decks that you have. Elemental energy is extremely important. There's no two ways around that. And you don't even need to know about alchemy in order to recognize that, to see that in daily life. I mean, we see that in every single thing we do, because alchemy is the study of the transformation. And so we do transformation from one element to the other. Whenever we cook, for example, there's lots of transformation going on there, but alchemy can be applied to anything. And I was reading this book, I don't remember the title, because I read a lot of books on alchemy lately. And they were talking about the fact that there's alchemy in business, there's alchemy in finance, lots of alchemy in finance, because let's not forget that at a certain point, alchemy was very famous for being the science that would transform any kind of metal into gold. And finance is basically doing that in some sort of a non-literal way, or sometimes even literal. But there was also alchemy in writing books, and also and especially alchemy in many, many movies. And guess what? One of the movies in which, and that's actually a fact, there was a panel of alchemists that was on set ready to consult, was The Matrix. And so that's fascinating to me. It's incredibly important to notice how alchemy is still present in our lives. And I really believe that out of all of my tarot decks, probably the Gentle Tarot is the one that has the element of earth, you know, more present in its cards. And because Mabon is all about earth, it's all about the transformation that takes place on an earth level, or earth as an element. I really believe that these two pair up really well together. Other reasons, well, first and foremost, as we've seen also with the Solara Occulto, the color palettes are very similar. Even though we may say that the Gentle Tarot has probably more complete and more a wider kind of color palette, but still does prefer these kind of earthy tones that you can find in a Mabon Oracle as well. The artwork is actually very similar, even more than what we've seen in the Solara Occulto. And these two, let me tell you, they read really, really well together. It's uncanny how the kind of conversation that they install between each other. It's just absolutely fantastic. You know, we've got Mead with and wine between the world and the emperor. The energy is super strong here because we've got two majors, but we also have that sense of celebration, that sense of harvesting, that sense of getting to the point in which you have been through so much because you used all your energy to try and create something, and when you do, finally you can celebrate because you've been harvesting that. And to give a pat on the back, you basically indulge perhaps a little bit too much, but no one is judging, into enjoying the fruits of what you've done. And rightfully so, because you've got the world on your side, that sense of completion, that sense of having been through the hero's journey that you also see at the point of harvesting. And the emperor on the other side, in which there's always this kind of control and this sense of 100% the sense of completeness and wholesomeness in that is reflected in nature, because you know very well that after the celebrations of the meat and the wine and celebrating because you've done what you were supposed to do in your role, your role in nature, then you also, because of the control that you've got and the sense of continuity, you also need to start again soon. So there's this kind of very strong and powerful conversation and bond, I believe, that you can definitely feel between these two decks whenever you use them together. And I have to say, thanks to Mabon, I'm actually using the Gentle Tarot more. I don't know if it makes sense. Sometimes I feel like I am so much into the pairings, the energy, the aesthetics and everything of a deck that it makes me happy to use it with tarot decks or oracle decks that I perhaps wasn't using as much. So this is a way to also, I've been talking about tarot boredom, but not necessarily boredom, but being stuck in tarot in your practice with some friends lately. And one of them would say, I really don't know what to do. Some of my decks are really beautiful and I don't want to give them away, but I don't use them. And so I asked myself, should I keep them? I'm like, try and see if maybe perhaps you changing your practice a little bit by perhaps pairing them up with an oracle, a different one, etc. will give you that kind of renewed sense of surprise and enthusiasm about your decks, because that works for me in many occasions. And I feel like it's you know, it's definitely the right thing to do whenever a deck is so beautiful. You don't want it to gather dust on the shelf, but on the other hand, you don't know how to start using it again. That perhaps, you know, changing a little bit the perspective on your practice or the way in which you use your decks may bring back that sense of wonder that bonded you to that deck in the first place. So this is the Gentle Earth Tarot. Earlier we've seen the Solara, and I've been pairing that with the Scissors of the Witch Mabon Oracle. So another pairing that has been voted, another couple of pairings that have been voted the best ones on Instagram, were the Abyssomnia with the Energy Archaeology Oracle and the Oracle of Oddities that I keep in this really beautiful tarot bag, because if you know, the Oracle of Oddities came in 3 different tack boxes, and I've just put them all together, so I didn't have a tack box that was big enough to host all of the cards. So let's have a look. The Abyssomnia Tarot is really beautiful. It is quite a recent acquisition in my collection, but that's only because I was really looking for it. I think it went out of print. It was very difficult to find it, and I found someone that was happy to I think it was a trade. I found someone that was happy to trade a couple of decks that I had for this deck, and I was really happy. The quality is amazing as well. I love the backs as well. So this creator is, I believe, from Zagreb, and they have this fantastic style that I really enjoy. They're also the creator of the Cosmic cards, which I shown in my latest video, which is focusing basically on astrology. And also they are currently working on another project. So it's I think the account I have on Instagram is called Orla Bird. It's just the way in which these cards speak to me is just quite unique. So I always wanted to find an oracle deck that will pair really well with this. And I posted a few, and everyone voted by far. That was almost a standing ovation, I would reckon. The Energy Archaeology. Now, let me explain. The Energy Archaeology is a very beautiful oracle. The artwork is fantastic, but it's not the only reason why I really love this deck. This deck is very powerful. There's no two ways around that. It's the way in which it communicates with you. It's the way in which it delivers the message. And the message behind the creation of this deck is that we actually, unfortunately, retain memory of the traumas we've been through in our bones. And so this deck, what it does is it looks into our body, it looks into the trauma that we've been through, and it points out the bones, literally the bones, in which we store trauma. And then once that's pointed out, we need to go into the guidebook, which is fantastic, and we will get to know a little bit about the significance of that bone in specific, what it does in our body, but also the reason that I like this deck is that it creates a parallel, it creates this kind of bridge between the physicality, so the very biological, let's say, essence of our of the trauma we've been through, so the reflection and the storing of that negative vibes into our bones, and in this bridge into the psychological and the spiritual, because it will by creating this bridge between these two realms, it will show you that in many cases physical pain is reflecting, is mirroring some mental discomfort, and vice versa. Whenever you're going through mental discomfort, you may experience physical pain. And as someone with chronic pain, I can assure you that every time I use this deck, I kind of get very emotional, because it is 100% spot on every single reading. So the Abyssomnia share that kind of very powerful tapping into your own core self. And therefore, these two work really well together. But let's have a look. So you may also find that perhaps the color palette is not necessarily the same, but that's something that doesn't really bother me. So I don't know if you work with pairings, let me know in the comments below, because I'm always interested to know what other people do, right? So, and I'm always enjoying the comments. I'm always making sure that I respond to everyone. What I like to know is if you use tarot and oracle in your practice and you pair them up together, what do you pay attention to? What is important to you? What makes a pair a match made in heaven? And what makes you go, nah, these two really do not pair together, they should never stay together, never ever be in the same shelf? So it depends obviously on many things, and I think it's very subjective, and there are a few things though I believe that should be taken into consideration, and aesthetics is not necessarily one of them. I feel that if two decks have this kind of conversation with each other, and they include you in the conversation if you're willing to listen, I feel that there's a very strong chance that it's a very good pairing. I feel like there's not always a kind of an instant, you know, like a falling in love at first sight between two decks. No, it doesn't always happen. But if you do start using them together because you have a hunch that they might go well together, and then you see that you were right, and you see that they actually do have this kind of strong bond, then you know your job is done there. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to, and be in the moment with the decks. Enjoy using them together, because it's a message that the message that an oracle and a tarot deck combine, let me tell you, is, I believe, 10 times or even 100 times more strong, more powerful than a message that you can get from either one separate, so by themselves. Tarot decks are very powerful, yes, absolutely. Oracle decks are very powerful, yeah. But together, it's just a different world. They're like on steroids. And I really like the fact that there's this combination of, you know, the element of nature. So we always have in the energy archaeology, we always have, yes, bones, obviously, that's the essence of the deck, but you also have some natural elements, and in many cases, not always, but in many cases you do have birds, and birds are one of the key elements, or feathers, for example, together with other natural elements like flowers and plants in the Abyssomnia. Now, Abyssomnia, abyss in Latin means birds, and somnia means sleep. So it's kind of referring to the oniric state, or the sleepy, related to sleep state of the intuition. So whenever you are taken by your intuition, you feel like you're going through some kind of a trance, and you are guided by the intuition itself. And that's what this is referring to. And I really like that there's the same kind of powers at play in the energy archaeology as well. But let me know what you think. I mean, these are the ones that have been voted the best pairs in Instagram, but I don't have the same. Many of you that follow me here on YouTube also follow me on Instagram, but you know, not all of you. So I'm very much interested to know what you think about these two decks together. I personally really enjoy them together. But let's have a look at another deck. So the second best pairing by popular vote for the Abyssomnia when it comes to an oracle deck is the Oracle of Oddities. As I said before, this is the combination of the three decks together. Now, I believe that this vote comes from the fact that these two do seem to share a more common color palette rather than the previous oracle, so the energy archaeology. And also, I also have the feeling that there's a more similar art style when it comes to, you know, the use of the colors and the use of the whites, the contrast with the whites and the backgrounds. For example, the muted colors on the backgrounds in many cases from the Abyssomnia will actually match the Oracle of Odysseus. It's a beautiful pairing. It's a beautiful pairing. It's a very powerful one at that. Let me tell you, the readings that I'm having especially with the Abyssomnia, I think it's because in any pairings you may have a tarot deck or an oracle deck, but in any case, when you pair up two decks together, one of the two will lead and the other one will follow. I don't know if, do I make any sense? So the way I see it is that when you use them, you have to decide what value to assign to the decks. So is the oracle deck going to be the focus of your attention when it comes to the message, or is the tarot deck going to do that for you? Is it a pairing that you're giving for any kind of different kind of practices? So it could be, you know, for divination, it could be for meditation, it could be for introspection, it could be for shadow work, for inner child work. There's so many things. And you obviously need to probably play with the two together before understanding why the two actually work really well together. And in many cases, I found that these two, whenever there's that sharing, even of not just the colors but also of the images on the card, we can see, for example, here in the Lover's card by the Abyssomnia, we've got a couple of snakes. And we've got a snake on the Fire card from the Oracle of Oddity as well. So whenever I find this happy coincidence, I feel that there's this really strong bond that is shown to me, you know, between these two decks. It's like being aware of the conversation that is going on, the fact that there are bones and skulls in the Abyssomnia, and obviously the Oracle of Odysseus, as you know, will have a lot of these bones and skulls, practically on every card. But it's also the very strong sense of decadence that is expressed by both the decks. So the Oracle of Odysseus, the concept of this oracle is the same that we think about when we think about the cabinet of oddities, you know, your most quirky things, and you put them all in a cabinet. And this deck is referred to really quirky artwork. And it's also referred to the fact that there's that sense of the prints that were in the anatomical books from, let's say, a couple of centuries ago. You know, there's that kind of almost a bit of a inspiration taken from those books. Ephemera. So ephemera was also the name of the tarot deck an edition of the tarot deck created by the same artist. So the Oracle of Oddities has been created by Claire Goodchild, which is also the creator of the Antique Anatomy Tarot. But if you don't know the Antique Anatomy, now it's mass market, but when it used to be an indie product, it was actually rather different. There were a couple of versions of that, and one of them was called Ephemera, and other two different editions. I don't remember. I think they were just the first and the second edition that were not called Ephemera. They did not have flowers. So it was mainly based on those images that we see in the antique prints from a couple of centuries ago in a doctor's office. You know what I mean? They really actually, there's another tarot, I think it's called the Paracelsus Tarot, which is produced by Dark Seneva, and it shows you pretty much all the drawings made by Paracelsus. And Paracelsus was not just a chemist, a doctor, a surgeon, but also a very famous alchemist. So I'm not mean to say that everything is connected, by no means. But it is beautiful when you have this kind of resonance, these kind of echoes that you can feel coming to the surface between the images that you can find on the tarot cards and the images you can find on the oracle cards. And I really do believe that because there's so much references to nature, to the decadence, the stadium, that stage of decadence that nature has to go through in order to be able to, like the phoenix, you know, be born again. You can really feel it both in the oracle cards and in the tarot cards. So this is the Abyssomnia Tarot, and I've been pairing it up with the Oracle of Oddities and the Energy Archaeology Oracle. And so the third deck that I wanted to show you today with some pairings is the Pacific Northwest Tarot by Brendan Mornell. This deck is also a recent acquisition, but I have seen it so many times and I really wanted to grab a copy. And by popular vote, the winners are the Phenomena Oracle by Jessica Bott and the Lo Scrigno degli Oracoli by Fabio Nocentini and Massimo Alfaioli. This is an Italian oracle deck, and Lo Scrigno degli Oracoli means the chest of oracles because it's got 3 different oracles inside. It's published by De Vecchi. You can find it on Amazon, so if you like it, you can find it on Amazon. However, you probably do need your Google Lens or Google Translate because some of the keywords are not as easy to understand if you don't speak Italian. But let's have a look at how these two pair up with the Pacific Northwest Tarot. So as I was mentioning, the Lo Scrigno degli Oracoli, so the chest of oracles, has got 3. It's a really chunky deck, and it's got 3 oracle decks together. Mainly, you'll see that there's the Oracle of the Cat, the Oracle of the Roman and Greek deities, and the Oracle of the witches. So this is, I like when I, shuffle them together. It's a huge deck, as you can tell by, comparing the size with the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific Northwest is the standard tarot deck size, and so you can tell how big this deck is. It does pose a bit of a problem for me. If you watch my channel, you know that I do have a bit of a problems with my hands and fingers, and this is unshuffleable. Is that even a word? But I cannot shuffle this one in a normal way. So for example, what I will do, but even so, obviously there's no refill shuffling in this deck. At least not for me. And also overhand, I obviously cannot do this, so I can only do overhand this way, which is quite fine. It's not a big deal. As you can see, the backs are different depending on which one of the 3 oracles the cards belong to. But it doesn't matter. This deck is so beautiful that, whenever you like a deck that much, you'll find a way, don't you? I mean, I always felt like sometimes I do tend to think, oh, I don't use this deck because I can't use it because it's impossible physically to use it. But then I think, okay, but if I really like that deck, I will find a way. So perhaps I'm not using that deck, not because I can't use it, but because I don't like it. So it's a matter of being honest with ourselves, isn't it? I think that these two pair really well together. They did win by popular vote, the pairing. But even if, you know, they had not been voted, I would have picked these two to show you anyway, because they are just fantastic together. And it goes, I think it's a 10 on every single one of the criteria that you may want to use, whether deciding on a pairing. Whether you focus on aesthetics, you've got a 10 here, absolutely a 10. Whether you focus on the energies, you definitely have a 10. Both really earthy kind of decks. If you focus on the keywords and messages, the way they interact, it's also a 10. Because, for example, this one, I'm sorry that it comes up with this card, which is the only card that I actually don't agree with. So this is Hecate. In Italian, in Roman, is spelled without the H. And the keyword for this card is fear. Now, I don't agree, because that's not what I think about, you know, related to Hecate. And to me, I was a bit disappointed, and I thought, this deck was so spot on everything else. How come they didn't do any kind of research, you know, on Hecate? It's so easy. There's so much literature. And so I actually went, for once, I really did a deep dive into the guidebook. And I saw that it's just the keyword that is off, but the description is very on point. So they talk about Hecate and the fact that you do need to face your shadow side, and you need to bring that out into the open, and that will be a way in which you can empower yourself. So I think that they probably did not really grab the right keyword for it, but in the guidebook, the way in which they refer to fear as something that you have to face, and Hecate being the deity that reflect that, it's probably not as bad as I initially thought it would be. So, long explanation to give you an idea why I actually really like the keywords in this oracle deck, and the fact that I believe that they resonate really well with the keywords, not the keywords, but the essence of the cards and the meaning of the cards of the tarot deck. So we've got the inner child here, for example, between the Magician and the Nine of Swords. And there's a lot of anxiety in here. There's a lot of trauma that is stored in this card. And that's the inner child that is standing on top of this raven or crow, which is recalled in the Magician here. So perhaps it's an invitation for us to actually make use of all the skills that we have got as a magician in order to gain a different perspective, in order to look at things in a different way, and thus releasing all the anxiety that is taken up in the middle of the night and is making us wake up at 2 a.m. because we don't see anything, because there is darkness around us, because we don't know what to expect. So use those skills, take a different perspective and release your anxiety. I could talk for hours about these two decks together. They're amazing. Even the directionality that you see, it works really well. The colors, everything. I will never get tired of talking about these two. And as I said, this deck is available on Amazon. It will come from Italy most likely, so obviously it will take some time. But if you have Amazon Prime, I believe that it might also be, I'm not sure entirely, but it might also be free shipping. So it's just a matter of being patient for it to arrive. It's probably, as I said before, it's probably best to use your Translate, Google Translate, or whatever other app you've got to translate the keywords. But many of them will be quite easy to understand. I mean, conflitto, if I say conflitto, you probably think conflict, right? And you'll be right, because conflitto means conflict. So between strength and the Nine of Cups. And there's this conversation going on, because strength sometimes is the kind of, you know, confrontation that you have in a conflict, and there's the kind of take of power of one of the two. And whenever we try and solve this conflict by using this coming and going of the energies of the two, we do reach the kind of abundance that we can experience in the Nine of Cups. There's this fluidity that we reach after having mastering that conflict that was putting everything off balance. So you can really talk for hours, you know, prompted by these two decks. The Moon with transformation, Pluto is the transformation, and the Six of Coins. They're absolutely beautiful. Wisdom between the Five of Wands and the Eight of Wands, and so on and so forth. We got strength again here with the Queen of Wands and the Devil. Beautiful. So this is by popular demand, and I think they reached something like 200 votes. Lo Scrigno degli Oracoli, so the chest of oracles, is the best pairing for the Pacific Northwest. But let's have a look at how the Phenomena Oracle pair up with the same tarot. So the second pairing that won by popular vote is with the Phenomena Oracle by Jessica Bott. Now, this deck is very similar to the Amethyst Oracle, except that the Amethyst Oracle, well, it's not specifically related to phenomena, but it's got the white borders, which I think these kind of borders is actually aesthetically pairs up better with this tarot deck, because the Amethyst Oracle was also in the grand finale, but it lost to the phenomena because of the borders. I realized that I'm only at the third deck, and I kind of have to speed up, because otherwise we're going to stay here forever. So my thinking was that either I will show you only 4 decks today, and then as in part 1, and then the other 4 decks in part 2 a different day. And yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do, because otherwise we're really gonna be here forever. And I don't know if you noticed, but I do like to chat a lot. So if you follow me on Instagram, you will see that I always, whenever I respond to a message or I write something, I write a lot. And also here, whenever I talk a lot. I do tend to talk a lot. But let's have a look at these 2 decks together. So the color palettes are very similar. There's also similarities that you can tell between the artwork. What I really like is that in this case there's different energies at play, which, you know, this goes to show you that 2 decks don't necessarily have to share something, whether it's aesthetic, color palettes or energies, to actually be a good pairing. They could be a good combo even by the fact that they complement each other. So to me, for example, the Phenomena is a very balanced deck, in the sense that it's got all the 4 elements. And as a matter of fact, I would feel like whenever we're referring to sky related phenomena, which there's a couple in this deck, I feel almost like we have the 5th element of the ether, you know, which is, it used to be in alchemy, it used to be referred to the elements that are in the outer planets of the galaxy, that the ancient philosophers did not think that they belonged to either of the other 4 elements. So whatever was present as an element in the outer planets of the galaxy that was not neither earth nor water, air nor fire, it would have been called ether. Then we realized that that was not the case. And so ether ceased to exist as a 5th element, but originally in alchemy they would have studied ether as well. All this to say that I believe that there's also a bit of a call to think of ether whenever we look at, well, we just saw this one, for example, the meteor. Meteor to me is related to the cosmos, so to cosmic, kind of a cosmic kind of element. And because of that, the Phenomena is a very balanced oracle, whereas the Pacific Northwest Tarot is a very earthy tarot, like we've seen before. Therefore, these two actually pair well together because they complement each other, not necessarily because they share something, although they do. I believe that they do share a very similar color palette, and as I said before, the artwork is very similar as well. So this is the second best oracle to pair up with the Pacific Northwest Tarot. But let's have a look at the fourth tarot for today, which is the Tarot of Tales. So if you have this tarot deck, you probably know how wonderful this tarot deck is, how fantastic the guidebook is, and how beautiful it is to get immersed into the magic of the tales that come to life in each and every card. So it was actually a very difficult pairing, I have to be honest with you, because I did not know what to pair it with at the beginning. I had a few ideas, so but let me show you what was voted on Instagram. So we're talking about the Solitary Witch Oracle and the Alphonse Maria Mucha Oracle cards by Los Carabeo. Let's go with the Solitary Witch first. So these two have been voted a match made in heaven, and I believe they are as such, because every time I used them together, I did have a hunch that they could have, you know, paired up together, but you never know. You always have to try and see for yourself if they actually work or not. But the more I use them together, the more I believe that there is a very strong, powerful sense of conversation, very intimate conversation happening between these two decks. You can see it immediately, the Balain lover with the Two of Cups, for example, the Six of Swords. It's already establishing that. It's as if these two decks actually know each other, and whenever I use them together, they go, oh, hi, it's you again. You know, which is kind of crazy, because they are not, even the, let's say, the reasons or the meanings of the two decks. One is the Tarot of Tales, which is literally looking at traditional tales from many different backgrounds. And the Solitary Witch is, no, it doesn't really share any of that. It's a very witchy kind of deck. Let's talk about pros and cons. First of all, you would notice that the borders, this kind of really beautiful, intricate kind of embroidery looking like borders are very similar between these two decks. So that's one thing that obviously will be a plus, because it will mean that it will be pleasing to the eye to actually compare these two together. The color palette is also very similar, which is something that, you know, is always responding to some aesthetics that the eye wants to see. The artwork is, I would say, very similar as well. However, I do have to point out that there is a difference in the way in which the brush strokes is used, and also the medium of the artwork is different. This feels more like pencil to me, and this feels more like probably oil paint. But I'm not an expert, so please don't, this is by no means something that I'm telling you with confidence. It's just something that I feel like by looking at the cards, that's all, and I might be completely wrong. But let's say that there is a very strong similarity in many areas, in many criteria. These two decks, when it comes to energy, they pair really well together. There is that kind of sense of arcane magic between the two of them. The magic of the tales that comes from the tarot, and the magic of the witchery, the coven that comes from the oracle. And I think that that's the main reason why I do enjoy them together, because it feels like the way in which the tarot is transporting you into mythical, magical, and beautiful stories is reflected by the way in which the oracle is doing exactly the same, although with a different meaning. So they start from two different points, but they actually achieve the same kind of result. And I really enjoy that. Now, I've seen the Solitary Witch, which is actually, I forgot to say, but it's by Lucy Cavendish. So it's, you know, Lucy's very famous in the tarot and oracle world. and it's being released by Blue Angel. So that was one of the reasons why I was actually be able to get access to this deck, is also because Blue Angel is also printed in Australia, so it's based in Australia, and they did give us a pre-release of this deck. I didn't receive the deck for review. I paid for it with my own money, but I just wanted to point out that you might not be able to, well, now it's probably released worldwide, but at the beginning when I got it like 3-4 months ago, 5 months ago, it had not been released yet. It's a very beautiful deck, but what I do share with the other tarot tubers is that I'm not necessarily happy about the keywords or sentences at the bottom of the cards, because sometimes they're very conducive of introspection. The witch shows her daughter the moon, for example. I really like this. Very poetic, it's very beautiful. I really love the fact that we've got the moon in the moon card as well. But some other cards, the next journey beacons, absolutely conducive, beautiful. She sleeps with the stars, perhaps a bit less. Her knowledge runs deep. Still very beautiful. But there you go, the 13th Esbat. So of course Esbat is something that you need to know what it is, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to enjoy the card. Yes, of course there is the guidebook, but when it comes to the dance of water, for example, you can imagine that it's got something to do with the fluidity, the celebration of the element of water, so something very emotional. But you still need to go back to the guidebook, and unless you know this deck really well, and perhaps by using it you do gain that kind of knowledge and you will recognize the cards when they come up, but you have to use it in such a way that you always have to go back to the guidebook, which is to me, whenever I'm in a reading, I don't want to be distracted. I don't want to be taken off the reading, away from the reading. So I would have loved, not all of the cards are like that. So there are cards that are perfectly fine with very, very powerful keywords, but others are not. And that's the only thing that I would say about that I'm not necessarily happy about this deck. But other than that, I think that these two are a match made in heaven. And on second place by popular vote is the Mujer Oracle by Los Carbeo. This deck is absolutely beautiful. I really love it, but as I was saying about the Solitary Witch Oracle, this is actually even worse in the sense that where the Solitary Witch Oracle sometimes gave you, not in all the cards, but in some cards, it actually gave you keywords or sentences that did not necessarily give you the possibility to elaborate on a sentence. This one doesn't give you anything, it just gives you the numbers. Having said that, how beautiful are these two together? It blew my mind. When I thought about this pairing, I wasn't sure 100% because of the color palette not being the same. As you can notice, the color palette on the Mujer is very watery, is very that kind of teal, green and blues, and very, very limited, but beautiful nonetheless. Whereas the Tarot of Tales has a different coloring. But this is another example in which, you know, I can show you that two decks actually pair really well together, even when they don't necessarily share some aesthetical criteria. So these two are really, really beautiful together. Unfortunately, though, because there's absolutely no keywords on the Oracle's cards, what happens to me whenever I use them together is that I tend to use the Oracle in a very intuitive way, which is absolutely fine. I mean, there is a guidebook, and obviously you go back to the guidebook with the number, and it gives you a short description of the card, and also gives you the meaning of the card, which is fine. But I actually found that I personally, and it's just me, personally, I do prefer to read the Oracle in an intuitive way, because in this case, it actually becomes complementary to the Tarot. So usually I do the opposite. Usually I start from the keyword in the Oracle because I put it in the middle, and then I will elaborate by looking at what it means as indicated by the tarot cards. However, in this case, what I do is actually the opposite. So I tend to focus on the message brought about by the tarot. So we've got the Queen of Cups and the Strength card. And in this case, I would definitely feel this kind of motherly, or, you know, this kind of taking care of things. So it's clearly a man. It's not a Queen of Cups as referred to a woman, but I don't read gender in the quote cards. So to me, the Queen of Cups is the person that is actually, it's the mystic, is the one that is always in touch with their own feelings and actually has achieved that kind of mastery on their own feelings, into their own introspection, and is nurturing everyone around them, bringing out those feelings and emotions in such a powerful and balanced way that it actually gives, makes others feel good. And that's something that I definitely recognize here. So there is this kind of really caring, affectionate kind of gesture from this person to this other person in the card. And then I will look at the Strength card, and I will also see that aspect, that it's almost an advice to never underestimate the power of feelings, because feelings and emotions can look very flimsy, whimsical at times, and also not and weak perhaps, but they actually have their own strength, their own power. And this is actually something that I recognize in this central card as well, because I do see the tenderness of this gesture, but I also see the strength and the power of this character. And that's something that I do. And perhaps then I go and read the meaning of the card number 2. It's something completely different. It's okay. I mean, obviously, when you accept that you're going to read intuitively a deck, you also have to accept that someone else will read it in a completely different way. That's okay. It doesn't have to be the same. There's no manual 101 for intuitive readings. You have to start from a common knowledge, absolutely. But I hardly think there is a common knowledge when it comes to oracle decks, where in fact there is a common knowledge when it comes to tarot decks. So start, have an intuitive reading of your tarot deck as well, and start from a common knowledge of the symbols. But then use 100% your intuition when it comes to oracles, because there's no system when it comes to the oracle. But how beautiful are these two together? Let me know if you like this combo in the comments below. I really believe that they really pair up really, really well with each other. So this is the Alphonse Maria Mucha Oracle by Los Carabeo, and I've been pairing it up with the Tarot of Tales. This is actually printed by US Games, and previously I have been pairing this up with the Solitary Witch Oracle. Now, as I said, I think at the third one, this is the fourth deck that I've been showing you with pairings. Originally, I wanted this video to show you all the 8 decks and the pairings that I've chosen for them, but it's a very, very long video. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop here and, you know, title this part 1. And then I'm going to show you in my next video, after the subscribers readings on Wednesday, I'm actually going to show you the part 2 of this video. So stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe, you know, and click on the alarm bell so you can be alerted when there'll be a new video, so you don't miss out on them. It really means a lot to me because of being part of this community. It makes me feel like there is this kind of energy that flows between us. It's a community. It's not, no man is an island. I'm not just here to show you the cards. I'm here to create this kind of communication with you, which is the most beautiful thing that can happen. So thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.